My name is Nick Calloway, and I'm an FBI Counter-Terrorism Supervisor based in Midtown. My job is to investigate threats to national security, ranging from domestic plots to international terror cells. I typically lead a dedicated team of special agents, analyzing intelligence and coordinating field operations. It's a position of high stakes and persistent stress. After years of living in cramped government apartments or near major city centers, my wife Evelyn and I decided it was time to purchase a house in the suburbs, craving a calmer environment to raise our teenage daughter, Anna. We found what seemed like an idyllic place, Evergreen Lane, within the Forest Glen Homeowners Association, about 30 miles from the hustle of Midtown. The neighborhood boasted meticulously trimmed hedges, wide sidewalks for morning jogs, and a strong sense of community among families. However, we soon discovered that an HOA can harbor its own brand of tyranny, particularly under the leadership of an infamous woman known behind her back as Karen. Her actual name was Teresa Harridan, but practically every frustrated neighbor referred to her as Karen for her overbearing, meddling ways. She chaired the Forest Glen HOA and was rumored to treat the entire neighborhood as her personal kingdom. People whispered horror stories of massive fines for small infractions, security cameras pointed at random houses, and intimidation tactics to keep residents in line. At first, I dismissed these tales as typical suburban gossip. Little did I know how drastically Karen would escalate matters, ultimately entangling her in a federal-level criminal case and crossing paths with me in my capacity as an FBI Counter-Terrorism Supervisor. Just a week after moving into our two-story home, we received a courtesy welcome letter from the HOA. Most of it was standard, politely enumerating local trash pickup times and landscaping guidelines. But on the second page, a stern note appeared, a reminder of HOA policy. Residents must conform to approved color schemes, mailbox designs, and yard ornaments. All visitors must park in designated spaces. Please see Teresa Harridan, HOA President, for any clarifications. Below that, an all-caps, urgent notice about placing trash bins exactly 12 inches from the curb. The tone made me raise an eyebrow. Did they measure distances with a ruler? Evelyn rolled her eyes, unimpressed. Our daughter, Anna, teased that we'd been roped into an adult version of a high school clique. We soon saw glimpses of Teresa, Karen, strolling down Evergreen Lane, binder in one arm, phone in the other, always scanning for violations. She was a woman in her mid-50s, with shoulder-length hair meticulously styled and a perpetually disapproving expression. On one afternoon, I was tending our lawn, pushing the mower across newly seeded grass, when she approached. "Good afternoon. You must be the Calloways," she said with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm Teresa Harridan, the HOA President. People call me Ms. Harridan, though some folks, quite rudely, call me Karen. I'm sure you've heard." Her tone suggested she wasn't too fond of the moniker. I kept my face neutral. "Pleased to meet you. We're just settling in." She eyed my mower. "We have decibel regulations for lawn equipment. I trust yours meets the standard." I blinked, noting how she angled her phone camera in my direction, presumably to gather evidence if she deemed my mower too loud. "It's an electric mower, fairly quiet," I offered politely. Karen nodded, still scrutinizing me. "Good. Also, you might want to look at the length of your hedges. We have a maximum height limit of 42 inches. She continued for a few more minutes about community aesthetics, her voice dripping with condescension. I forced a pleasant response, reminding myself not to aggravate her. Little did I realize that her intrusions were just the tip of the iceberg. Over the next few weeks, petty conflicts with the HOA became routine. We got letters about our garbage can being left out 15 minutes past the scheduled pickup, warnings about a non-uniform mailbox color, and even a complaint regarding an unapproved bird feeder in our backyard. It became clear that Karen wielded the HOA's rulebook like a weapon to maintain her sense of power. Our neighbors, too, seemed on edge. Some admitted that they disliked Karen's tyranny but feared speaking out, worried about being singled out for harassment. One neighbor, an older gentleman named Mr. Weinstein, confided that Karen had fined him $200 for installing a small flagpole on his porch without seeking prior approval. Another neighbor, Ms. Vargas, had been ordered to remove her daughter's bicycle from the driveway to preserve visual harmony. Meanwhile, I tried to keep my true occupation under wraps. My official position as an FBI counterterrorism supervisor was not typically public knowledge. I'd introduced myself simply as a federal employee, hoping to maintain a low profile. Evelyn worked as a software consultant, and Anna was a bright high school student who volunteered at local charity events. We just wanted to live a normal suburban life. Karen, however, never ceased prodding. She once demanded we fill out a household occupation survey, fishing for details about our jobs and daily schedules. We politely declined, citing privacy. That refusal seemed to set her on a path of intensifying scrutiny, almost as if she suspected we might be concealing something. Amid the tension, the national election cycle approached. Our county assigned various public locations as polling sites to accommodate the surge of voters. Typically, these included libraries, schools, and community centers. But a scheduling conflict left the local library unavailable on short notice. Desperate for extra polling capacity, the county clerk asked if Forest Glen's clubhouse could serve as a temporary voting center on Election Day. It was spacious, climate-controlled, and accessible for people with mobility issues. Many residents saw it as convenient, no need to drive far to vote. But Karen bristled at the idea of outsiders converging on her neighborhood. She worried about traffic, noise, and potential property damage. She lobbied the HOA board to reject the clerk's request, but the other board members recognized the civic duty and potential positive publicity. They outvoted her. Infuriated, Karen grudgingly allowed the arrangement but issued multiple conditions: designated parking spaces, time restrictions for voters, and a mandatory badge system for poll workers. The county officials politely complied with the feasible requirements, but balked at some that contradicted state election laws. Karen's frustration grew. Meanwhile, I observed from the sidelines, unaware that her hostility would soon escalate into a reckless act with federal implications. I believe this might just be a typical HOA power struggle. But behind closed doors, Karen was formulating a cunning plan to disrupt the voting center, one that would place her in direct conflict with the FBI. In the run-up to Election Day, rumors flew around the neighborhood. Some speculated Karen intended to hamper the polling station through bureaucratic harassment, like restricting voter parking or fining volunteers. Others joked that she might turn off the electricity. I half dismissed the rumors, supposing that no one would stoop so low as to sabotage an official election site. But as the big day drew closer, the tension was palpable. County representatives arrived to set up voting booths inside the clubhouse. Karen stood by with a scowl, arms folded, watching them carry in boxes of ballots and electronic machines. That evening, a neighbor named Kevin Tran quietly mentioned something unsettling to me. He'd overheard Karen on the phone, ranting about how no one will show up to vote if we scare them off. He worried she might do something rash. I decided to keep my ears open. If she indeed planned any criminal mischief, it could cross lines well beyond a petty HOA dispute. Election Day dawned bright and clear. At 6 a.m., poll workers unlocked the clubhouse doors, preparing for early voters. A trickle of cars entered the neighborhood, displaying minimal disruption. I walked over to cast my vote before heading to the FBI field office for a scheduled briefing. Evelyn planned to drop Anna at school, then also vote around mid-morning. Everything seemed calm. Then, around 8 a.m., the poll workers encountered a glitch. The air conditioning abruptly shut off, leaving the room stuffy. They scrambled to figure out why. A call to the HOA's maintenance line went unanswered. Some suspected sabotage, but they found no proof. An hour later, a no parking sign popped up near the clubhouse, placed by an unknown individual, leading to confusion among arriving voters. Yet these annoyances didn't deter a steady flow of residents. By 9:30 a.m., I quietly thought to myself, if this is Karen's sabotage, it's fairly mild. Little did I know that, behind the scenes, she had orchestrated a far bigger, more dangerous stunt. Shortly after 10 a.m., the county dispatch center received a 911 call from someone claiming that a bomb had been planted at the Forest Glen Clubhouse polling station. The caller disguised their voice but insisted they had seen suspicious wires and packages near the voting machines. They demanded the immediate evacuation of the site. Within minutes, local police and bomb squad units raced to the scene, lights flashing. Poll workers and voters were ushered out under the blazing sun. Panic rippled through the line of seniors waiting to cast ballots. Word spread quickly. There's a bomb threat. I was in a briefing at the FBI field office when my phone buzzed. A colleague said, Nick, you live in Forest Glen, right? We have a reported bomb scare at your HOA's polling station. You might want to get over there. My jaw tightened. A bomb threat on election day was no small matter, and if it was proven false, it would be a serious felony. I hopped into my government-issued SUV, sirens off, but driving swiftly, and rushed back to the neighborhood. I arrived to find the street swarmed by local patrol cars. Yellow police tape cordoned off the clubhouse. The bomb squad was deploying a small robot to check for explosives. Meanwhile, frightened onlookers huddled behind barricades. I stepped out of my vehicle, calmly displaying my FBI badge to local law enforcement. An on-scene police lieutenant recognized me. Agent Calloway, you live here, right? We got a call about a bomb. So far, the bomb squad hasn't located anything suspicious, but we're still sweeping the area. Any leads on who made the threat? I asked, scanning the worried faces of poll workers and neighbors milling about. Not yet. The call came from a burner phone, untraceable so far. It might be a hoax or an attempt at voter intimidation, the lieutenant said. This is serious. The county's in contact with the state election board. My gut churned. Voter intimidation is a federal crime. A bomb threat that disrupts an election? That stepped into the realm of potential terrorism charges. The penalty could be severe. I had a mental image of Karen, who'd raged about the voting center, and felt alarm bells ring in my head. Could she have stooped to a fake bomb threat? It seemed extreme, but we'd already seen her pettiness. Perhaps she believed this would be an easy way to shut down voting. I discreetly told the lieutenant I'd coordinate with the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force, JTTF, to investigate. He welcomed the help. As the bomb squad finished its sweep, no explosive device was found. The call evidently had been a hoax. But the chaos had served its likely purpose. The polling station was forced to close temporarily, sending many voters away. By the time the authorities declared it safe, the lines had dissipated. Some older residents, spooked by the threat, might not return to vote. The local news arrived, broadcasting live from the scene. They described worried citizens who didn't know if they could safely cast ballots now. Election officials struggled to reassure them. Inside the clubhouse, poll workers were stressed and behind schedule, waiting for the official all-clear to resume. I strolled around the perimeter, searching for any sign of who might have orchestrated this. Suddenly, from across the street, I spotted Karen loitering behind a hedge, phone in hand, wearing a smug expression. She didn't appear worried. Rather, she seemed almost triumphant. My heart pounded. Did she do this? I carefully moved away to contact my FBI colleagues, who were on their way. If Karen was indeed behind it, she'd committed a federal felony with major implications. As the FBI's counter-terrorism supervisor in the region, I was about to be personally involved in investigating my own neighbor. Within the hour, a small contingent from the FBI's JTTF arrived, including a tech specialist named Agent Patel. We collaborated with local PD, reviewing phone records. The 911 center's logs indicated the call originated from a burner phone purchased at a convenience store the prior week. The voice was masked but possibly female, hard to confirm. We canvassed the area, asking neighbors if they'd seen anyone suspicious that morning. A few recalled glimpsing Karen pacing around with her phone. One poll worker recalled hearing someone mention, "No one should vote here," in an angry tone near the clubhouse. Another neighbor, Ms. Chong, said she saw Karen hurrying down the street right after 10 a.m., phone to her ear, muttering under her breath about blowing up the fiasco. It was circumstantial but pointed heavily at Karen. We needed more concrete proof. Meanwhile, the cost of the bomb squad response, plus the disruption to the election, was enormous. If we confirmed it was her, she'd face not just local charges, but also possible federal terrorism-related charges due to the attempt to shut down a voting center through fear. As the day wore on, local police helped the poll workers reopen. Some voters returned, but turnout was clearly impacted by the scare. Anger brewed among many residents who recognized this as sabotage. Karen, however, was nowhere to be seen in the immediate aftermath. She'd slipped away. Later that evening, I was at my home office combing through notes when my phone chimed. A friend in the police department texted me. We pulled security cam footage from the HOA's own cameras near the clubhouse. You might want to see this. Curious, I drove to the station. The grainy footage clearly captured Karen standing near the entrance around 9:58 a.m., talking on her phone, then darting off the property. The timeline matched perfectly with the 911 call made around 10 a.m. This was a game-changer, visual evidence placing her at the scene, using her phone, right before the bomb threat. Though not irrefutable proof alone, it strongly supported the theory that she was the perpetrator. The FBI forensics team also discovered that Karen had purchased a prepaid phone under a pseudonym a week prior at a nearby convenience store. The store's security camera showed her face. Our suspicion was becoming a certainty. To secure an airtight case, we decided to gather additional evidence linking Karen to the burner phone. Under a federal warrant, we tracked the phone's usage. We discovered that after the bomb threat call, it was used once more that evening, likely to check on local news or see if the station was still closed. The cell tower pings placed the device near Karen's home on Evergreen Lane. Simultaneously, the local PD visited Karen to ask questions about the day's events. She feigned ignorance, claiming she heard about the bomb threat from neighbors and that she was shocked anyone would do such a thing. She played the role of outraged citizen, offering no helpful leads. But behind her facade, we suspected she was anxious, waiting to see if we had proof. She'd miscalculated the seriousness of such a stunt. The federal government does not take bomb threats lightly, especially if it disrupts an election. Even local law enforcement recognized that if we pinned it on her, the consequences would be monumental. Up until now, I kept my official position semi-private. But with Karen as the prime suspect, I could no longer remain just an anonymous neighbor. I approached the FBI leadership, who authorized me to assist in the local joint investigation. My knowledge of Karen's personality and her hyper-controlling behavior at the HOA was valuable context. At a joint briefing with the local police chief, I laid out the evidence: the 911 call timing and location, Karen's presence at the scene based on HOA cameras, the burner phone purchase and subsequent usage near her residence, multiple witness statements about her intense opposition to the polling station. We believed it was enough for probable cause. The next morning, a federal magistrate approved a search warrant for Karen's home. The plan was to execute it discreetly, but with enough manpower to handle any confrontation. This time, it wouldn't be a petty HOA spat. It'd be a full-blown FBI operation. At dawn, an FBI tactical team and local officers assembled near Forest Glen. We wanted to minimize alarm among neighbors, so we arrived in unmarked SUVs, wearing subdued gear. I stood by as they approached Karen's front door. An agent knocked firmly and announced, "FBI, we have a warrant." Karen eventually opened the door, looking flustered in a housecoat. "What is the meaning of this?" she hissed, voice trembling with indignation. An agent read the warrant. "We have reason to believe you made a false bomb threat at the Forest Glen polling station. We're authorized to search your property for evidence." Karen turned red, sputtering about her rights and harassment. Nevertheless, the agents entered and began combing through her home. Within minutes, they found what we hoped for: the burner phone, hidden in a kitchen drawer, still partially charged. A quick on-site forensic check matched its serial number to the phone used in the 911 bomb threat. Karen tried to claim she'd never seen it before, but the phone logs told a different story. Additionally, they uncovered notes in her binder referencing Operation Cleanse, describing ways to deter outsiders from voting in the neighborhood. Tactics listed included fake HOA policy threats and, chillingly, anonymous tip about a threat so they all get scared away. This written evidence was beyond damning. Standing in her living room, I watched as the lead agent read Karen her Miranda rights. She gaped at me. You're behind this? You're some FBI big shot." I replied calmly, "My name is Nicholas Calloway. I work in counterterrorism. You orchestrated a bomb threat on a polling station, Miss Harridan. That's a serious federal offense." Her face contorted with rage and fear. But, I was just trying to protect the neighborhood from all the random people flooding in. It's not actual terrorism. There was no real bomb." The agent snapped cuffs onto her wrists. "A false bomb threat is still a felony, especially one targeting an election site. You're under arrest." Karen shrieked about her property rights, threatening lawsuits. Yet she had no recourse. The evidence was conclusive. Neighbors peered from windows as FBI vehicles escorted her away. Many looked stunned, though some quietly expressed relief or whispered. Finally, she crossed the line too far. That line, indeed, was the boundary between petty HOA tyranny and genuine federal crimes. Karen's arrest sent shockwaves through Forest Glen. With the HOA president suddenly gone, the remaining board members scrambled to handle daily tasks. Many residents were outraged to learn the truth behind the bomb threat fiasco. They'd endured hours of anxiety and potential disenfranchisement from voting, all because their HOA leader wanted to sabotage the polling station. Local news covered the story relentlessly. HOA president arrested for bomb hoax on election day. My name wasn't mentioned on TV, but rumors circulated that an FBI official living in the neighborhood had led the charge. Some neighbors approached me with gratitude, while others just stared, uncertain how to react to having an FBI counter-terrorism supervisor next door. Meanwhile, the county's legal apparatus prepared charges. The U.S. Attorney's Office declared an intent to pursue maximum penalties, citing the threat's disruption of a fundamental civic process. Karen's personal finances, we soon learned, were heavily tied up in her house. If she was found guilty and faced civil suits, she risked losing everything. Unlike lesser offenses where bail is routine, a bomb threat case tied to an election can lead to strict conditions. Prosecutors argued Karen was a flight risk or could attempt further intimidation. The judge agreed to hold her without bail until a hearing. Karen's once intimidating presence vanished behind the bars of a detention center. The FBI sifted through her phone records, email accounts, and other digital footprints, building a robust case. We discovered she had planned this for weeks, initially considering smaller pranks, then escalating to a hoax about a bomb. She even boasted to a friend via text about teaching those voters a lesson. That friend had declined to join her scheme. Though I typically handle large-scale terror threats, seeing the depth of her premeditation chilled me. She might not have been a standard extremist, but her obsession with controlling the neighborhood, coupled with her animosity toward the election site, led her to commit a grave, terroristic act, legally speaking. A grand jury swiftly indicted Karen on multiple charges, making a false bomb threat under federal statute, conspiracy to interfere with voting rights, a serious offense since it involved intimidation or threat on election day, obstruction of justice for lying to investigators, and tampering with evidence. At her arraignment, Karen pled not guilty, still insisting she did nothing wrong. Her defense attorney tried to downplay it as a minor hoax without malicious intent, but the prosecutor hammered back. A bomb hoax is never minor, and it directly disrupted an official voting process, something the Department of Justice takes extremely seriously. Garden Glen residents looked on with morbid fascination. The once fearsome HOA president now sat in a jumpsuit before a federal judge, indicted on terrorism-related charges. Meanwhile, multiple neighbors filed civil suits for emotional distress and property value impacts. The story dominated local headlines, overshadowing other election news. With Karen out of the picture, the Forest Glen HOA was in disarray. Board members who had supported her micromanaging style resigned to avoid the scandal's blowback. A caretaker board took over, vowing to scale back harsh policies and restore normalcy. They apologized for Karen's actions, disclaiming any knowledge of her bomb threat plan. Many residents felt embarrassed that their community became a national laughingstock. They banded together to adopt a new, more transparent approach to HOA leadership, discarding the draconian rules Karen once enforced. Fines were reduced, petty regulations undone, and an open-door policy encouraged neighborly cooperation over intimidation. As for our household, Evelyn and Anna were relieved that the constant tension might finally ease. We no longer worried about every small compliance detail or dreaded random violation letters. The neighborhood felt freer. But the looming trial meant Karen would remain in the spotlight until final justice was served. Karen's trial date arrived a few months later in the federal courthouse downtown. Journalists crowded the steps, eager for updates. The prosecution called numerous witnesses. Poll workers described the panic of the bomb threat, the fear for their safety, and the abrupt voting halt. Local police recounted the phone evidence linking Karen's burner phone to the 911 call. FBI technicians explained the technical traces and match call logs. Neighbors testified about Karen's animosity toward the polling station and her remark, "We'll get rid of them one way or another." I was subpoenaed to testify briefly about her interactions with me as a neighbor, though I carefully avoided revealing sensitive FBI intel. The key was establishing her motive, opportunity, and means to orchestrate a hoax with the intent of sabotaging the election. Combined, the evidence painted a clear and damning picture. Karen took the stand in her own defense, proclaiming she'd merely wanted peace in the neighborhood. She insisted she had no plan to threaten anyone. But cross-examination shredded her explanations. The text messages, the burner phone purchase, her presence near the clubhouse, all indicted her claims. After days of testimony and arguments, both sides rested. The jury seemed visibly disturbed by Karen's disregard for the potential harm of a bomb hoax, especially targeting a polling place. I sensed the verdict would be swift. The jury deliberated for a single day before returning a guilty verdict on all major counts: felony false bomb threat, conspiracy to intimidate voters, and obstruction of justice. Karen's face went ashen as the foreperson read the verdict. She clutched the table, shaking her head in disbelief. The judge praised the jury's diligence and set a sentencing date, warning that the crimes carried a substantial prison term. Outside, cameras flashed as reporters pressed for comment. The Department of Justice spokesperson declared it a victory against attempts to undermine democracy. Many from Forest Glen expressed relief that the ordeal was finally nearing a close. Freed from Karen's reign of terror, they felt validated that the law recognized her dangerous behavior for what it was. Karen's defense counsel tried to salvage some dignity, insisting on appealing the verdict. But public sympathy was scarce. Even neighbors who once tolerated her saw no excuse for terrorism-level tactics to block voting. Weeks later, the sentencing hearing convened. Prosecutors highlighted the severity of interfering with an election, the cost of the bomb squad response, and the psychological damage to residents. Karen's attorney requested leniency, citing her clean record prior to this. The judge, however, was unswayed. He emphasized that a bomb hoax is a grave offense, particularly one designed to intimidate voters and hamper democracy. When the judge handed down the sentence, it was heavy: multiple years in federal prison for the bomb threat and conspiracy convictions, plus thousands in fines. Moreover, the judge allowed civil suits by impacted residents to proceed. Karen's home and other assets would likely be seized or sold to pay restitution. A hush fell over the courtroom as the reality sank in. She was going to prison, her property confiscated, her life's illusions of superiority shattered. Karen, once the self-appointed dictator of the HOA, sobbed as marshals led her away in handcuffs. Her final words to the judge: "I didn't mean real harm, just wanted to protect our community." The judge reminded her that democracy is not something to sabotage out of personal preference. Forest Glen underwent a transformation in the wake of Karen's downfall. A newly elected HOA board abolished many of her petty rules, fostering a friendlier atmosphere. Freed from fear of retribution, neighbors planted the gardens they wanted, parked in drives without counting inches, and used the sidewalks to gather without scanning for hidden cameras. The clubhouse updated its rental policies to support community events, like local fairs, charity drives, and, if ever needed again, an official polling station. New committees formed to ensure transparency, and many residents discovered they actually liked volunteering to improve the neighborhood when not forced to do so. Even the local county recognized the clubhouse as a success story. After the fiasco ended, they commended the new leadership's willingness to host future civic events. As for me, I resumed my daily routine as an FBI supervisor, relieved that no further drama plagued my home life. My daughter Anna joked that we defeated the final boss of suburban evil. Evelyn, too, said a weight lifted from her shoulders. No more petty notices or constant watchful eyes. We occasionally glanced at Karen's now empty property, rumored to go on auction soon to satisfy court judgments. In the months following Karen's incarceration, life at Forest Glen settled into a peaceful rhythm reminiscent of the best suburban ideals. Kids played in yards, families barbecued on weekends, and civic-minded neighbors came together to maintain communal areas. The previous environment of intimidation had evaporated. Reflecting on the ordeal, I recognized a broader lesson about the destructive capacity of someone fixated on control, how quickly petty authoritarianism can escalate if left unchecked. The lines between nuisance and criminal blur when a person's lust for power overrides fundamental rights, like the right to vote safely. In the end, it took the combined efforts of local police, the FBI, and courageous residents to reaffirm that no individual, no matter their title, can sabotage democracy with impunity. Karen's story concluded with her serving a lengthy prison sentence. Her property was sold at auction, with proceeds partially compensating those who suffered emotional distress or other damages from the bomb threat. Some might pity her downfall, others felt only relief. Most folks agreed she'd reaped what she sowed. Though no bombs had ever been real, the terror and chaos Karen unleashed were genuine enough. And as an FBI counterterrorism supervisor living in that quiet suburban enclave, I was reminded that threats to public safety and democracy can emerge from the most unlikely corners, even from the meddling HOA president down the street.